Isaac Netero, a character iconic to the HunterXHunter series. One who was presented as the standard old man archetype, complete with the aloofness and occasional perversities. But as the story unfolded, we saw very different facets of Netero that created a deeply unique and complex character. I want to dive into his character and representation in the story a bit, and a few ideas I have about it all. Disclaimer: these are my own personal opinions and interpretations of Netero and HunterXHunter, and I am not basing this off of anything that Togashi has said, and though I'm going to speak on Buddhism a bit, I am not a devout Buddhist myself, and I might get some information wrong. But with that all out of the way, let's get started. The best place to start is the beginning. The earliest we see of Netero was the humble beginnings of how he achieved such immense power in Nen. Netero, at 46 years old, yes, let that be a lesson for all of you out there that you can still be incredibly strong and ripped at 46, you just have to keep training, eat right, and get your sleep. Anyway, Netero went into the mountains to train and he realized something important.
Sensing that he had reached the upper limits of his physical and martial arts skills, he pondered and reflected, and he realized that he was grateful.
The man had dedicated his life to the martial arts, and in return, it gave him the strong body and mind that was displayed here. But even more so than that, the idea of being grateful can be a very powerful tool to gain even more physical, mental, and spiritual strength. See, what we focus on and tell ourselves directly correlates to the energy that flows through our bodies and out to the world. If you constantly tell yourself that you suck and that you're not good enough and that you will fail, those little bites of darkness will grow, and not only will you believe these things that you say, but you will subconsciously manifest them into reality. It's so crazy, but it's true. If you become your own worst enemy, and even if you think that you're doing all the right things, instead you will actually sabotage yourself subconsciously. Well, the funny thing is that the same thing is true for positivity and for gratitude. Constantly reminding yourself of what you are grateful for, as well as being appreciative of the things you do have rather than being upset about the things that you don't, you kind of refocus and reprogram your entire brain into a more positive presence. Imagine Netero here, truly appreciative for what he has. And what does he have? Well, we don't really know. All we are given is that he practiced the martial arts for basically his entire life. He's here in tattered clothes, alone, and in the cold. But he doesn't complain. He doesn't wish for something better. He doesn't blame the world for any faults that he may have. No, instead he shows gratitude for what he does have. His own strength, his own mind and soul. Simplistic things. Being alive, breathing, being able to move his body. Imagine every day just being so grateful just to exist. So much so that you show your gratitude to the world, to the universe. You decide to display it in the best way that you know how. Punch in the goddamn air. Well, if you're a martial artist anyway. So Netero was determined to give 10,000 punches of gratitude a day for his very life and existence in this universe. And in between each punch, he would pray. And when it comes to the prayer here, we are talking a more philosophical idea of prayer, not a prayer to a god per se. You could call God the universe, perhaps, but since Netero relates to the Bodhisattva, I'm directing it more towards that meaning. As Netero continues his training, he becomes faster and stronger with every punch and every prayer, with every thank you. And this is so vitally important to the idea of Buddhism and understanding Netero as a character. Hell, even the idea of Nen itself. Nen is our own life energy, our aura, manifested in some way to directly represent you as a person. A deeply complex power system, yet one that works so beautifully as an individualistic display of one's true self. If you'd like to know more about my thoughts about Nen and how it reflects to real-life ideas, please check out my Nen in Real Life video. The link will be in the description below. In Buddhism, instead of there being a god, there is more the impression that we are all part of God. God being everything working together in unison. To understand that we are the universe, a piece of it here, temporarily in a meat sack, and that we exist long before this form and we will exist long after this form goes away. The goal of Buddhism is to reach a state of nirvana, and my interpretation is that it's a state of being that is emptiness, or as I interpret it, becoming present to the moment and truly ridding yourself of the social norms put on you, free of all thought and just complete acceptance of everything. But the interpretation is different to many people and is one of those things where you can't really know what it is unless you've experienced it. Back to Netero, his Nen ability is called the 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is a title given to someone who could achieve nirvana but purposely chooses not to or delays it in order to help others with their own suffering. Now let's think about Netero. Yes, he did stay in the mountains for a long time. Yes, he did get faster and stronger and stayed grateful. He found more time to meditate and become even more at peace with himself and with the universe. And perhaps he could have stayed isolated here and made his way to true nirvana. But he didn't. Netero instead returned to the world of man, a bit different this time. Perhaps the realization of his newfound speed and power was too much for even he to ignore its potential to display this force to others. Not something he could keep to himself. He had to fight. It wasn't rage that was leading him. It wasn't a sense of justice either. So what was it? The thrill of a challenge. I think there is something inherent with everyone who is granted a semblance of power, physical or authoritative. How far can they push it? How long until someone challenges it? How long until it is not enough? Wanting to know if they have tasted the pinnacle of what there is to offer in the world, or if they have already reached it. So Netero traveled and accepted challenges, not to beat people into the dirt to satisfy his ego, but to see if there would or could be anyone who could achieve what he had, and if anyone could push it even farther. Alas, nobody could. Netero even ventured to the Dark Continent, a forbidden place that almost nobody knows about, let alone has returned alive from. And Netero went there twice. But it was not the kind of challenge that he expected. There were no adversaries, just bizarre traps, plants, and monsters that he had to survive from. It wasn't until Netero was over 100 years old that he finally found such a challenge, in the form of the Chimera Ant King, Meruem. Now, this isn't going to become a Meruem analysis too, but many people relate Meruem to not being a Bodhisattva, but being like an actual Buddha, having achieved an enlightened state in the end. It is an interesting comparison, considering a Bodhisattva is meant to help others towards their own enlightenment, and perhaps Netero did perform that role and led Meruem to an ultimate place of peace and nirvana. The ability Netero uses to face Meruem is his 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva, and this heavily represents Netero as a character and his feelings in this battle. Just before the fight, Netero believed the only thing he could about Meruem, that he was an incredible evil and a powerful creature that shouldn't exist, that wanted to enslave and kill all of mankind. Well, Netero couldn't let that happen. Despite his mischievousness and love of a good fight, he does have the power to help and wouldn't let the entire human race go extinct. But the oddest thing happens when he arrives. Meruem shows signs of compassion and wants a civil dialogue instead of a fight. This causes a conflict inside Netero. After all, he came here for an extermination, and now he is seemingly the more vicious one, and the one provoking the fight. The sad fact is, though Meruem is showing signs of the positive sides of humanity, he is still a major threat and a wild card as far as what he will ultimately do. Netero is in a position where he has to kill him, but he needs Meruem to fight back. He can't just be a destroyer. And so, finding something Meruem wants, to know his own name, they finally agree upon a proper duel. Now back to his Nen ability, the Guanyin Bodhisattva. Guanyin was actually the name of a particular Bodhisattva that is associated with that of compassion. The irony that Guanyin representation is used for attack and violence, the opposite of what it's meant to represent, and also the opposite of what the enemy, Meruem, had wanted. But again, in a strange way, Netero's final moments was seemingly what both characters needed. Netero returned to the world to find that height of perfection, something he could not find in mankind but found in a creature evolved past his level. Just the same, Meruem understood several important lessons while battling Netero. One is that a human being, something he viewed as inferior, could reach a heightened level. It's possible, with work, effort, and gratitude, that we can reach paradigms above what we imagine is possible. I truly believe this, and as Netero began fighting Meruem for real, he even told him he was grateful for this encounter, for everything that led him here. Meruem gave Netero the reason he had been looking for over these past 50 years. Netero was able to go all out in battle, something he never thought would be possible. But Meruem also learned another not-so-positive lesson from this fight, that despite Netero's gratitude for it all, he became the very destructive force he was trying to rid the world of, not even allowing the possibility of defeat. Netero rigged the game, implanting essentially a nuclear bomb within his chest. Should Netero die, then they both would. Miniature Rose, the name of the bomb, was a representation of the darkest aspects of humanity at work. It's the antithesis of nirvana. It's what you achieve not by spending time alone in the mountains reflecting inward, but directing negativity outwardly in an attempt to control the very workings of nature. Meruem, despite it all, was the universe at work, evolution and natural selection. A nuclear blast is something that can only be conjured up by mankind. It is not something that is natural. It is not part of the workings and flow of energy in the universe. Humans are capable of horrors and atrocities like this. Humans are what Netero was fighting for. Not for the world, for humanity. And there's a distinction there. And the fact that the nuclear blast is used was no surprise, as Togashi, being Japanese, comes from a country directly affected by a nuclear blast in history and the countless amounts of devastation that it caused in Hiroshima. So the irony of Netero using the compassionate Guan Yin to battle and then not accepting his defeat without a human intervention of destruction. So do I still think that Netero is a good person? Well, define good. Netero is not a villain. He doesn't intend harm. He did have gratitude for it all in the end, and he did fight for just causes. But he was a far cry from a Buddha. He rode that line between a calm spiritual person and a prideful member of the human race. Perhaps he couldn't let go of that attachment to being human. In his last moments, he gave into it in order to not defeat, but kill what he viewed as the ultimate threat to humanity. He chose to embrace that dark side of it. He chose negativity and violence. And the fact that Meruem ultimately chose submission and love was a flip of a script that only Togashi could have pulled off so brilliantly. Netero the man goes out in fire and brimstone. Meruem, the monster, dies in a loving embrace. But once again, in order to reach his own nirvana, to become a Buddha and understand what's truly important, maybe Meruem needed that push and a final nail of understanding, coming from the most powerful man on earth, Isaac Netero, the Bodhisattva. So tell me what you think of this character breakdown and analysis between the comments below. Like I said, I am not a Buddhist myself, so I might have got some information wrong, but I do think all of this is very interesting considering Netero as a character, and he is one of my favorite characters in all of HunterXHunter. So let me know your thoughts about Netero down below. Please like this video, comment, share it. The more interaction the video gets, the higher it goes in the algorithm of YouTube, so that would really help me out. Subscribe if you guys want to stick around and see more content. Other than that, I will talk to you in the next video, guys.